I'd like to introduce our first of 4 for this month. So we have our series is going to be 4 Wednesdays in July. And what this series is based on is things that relate to Israel from very different aspects. Tonight is going to be talking about the Hebrew language. And this topic is going to be based on a book that our speaker has written, reading the Archaeology of the Holy Land. And I just want to remind people that we have one every Wednesday for the next 4 Wednesdays, which means this Wednesday, obviously, we're here. Next week we have one. Someone's phone? That phone. It's okay. Next Wednesday we have a movie called Beneath the Helmet. Beneath the Helmet is a video that's about Israeli soldiers. The week after that we have a presentation from Lev HaOlam, which is an organization that is in the Shomron to help promote those organizations or people that are selling products from the Shomron that are being attacked by BDS. And the last week we have Israel Inside, which is the last week in July, the last Wednesday in July, and that topic is about all the different innovations that happen in Israel. So we have 4 totally different experiences about Israel, and tonight is where we kick it off. So tonight we're going to introduce Rabbi Reuven Chaim Klein. We're not related, at least not closely related. We might be distantly related. He grew up in Los Angeles in the Valley, and he's been living in Eretz Yisrael at least the last 10 years, going through all the top yeshivas, but at least certainly starting with Emek and Valley Torah, but then heading to Yeshiva Gedola, Emek and Yeshiva Gedola, and then heading to the Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. And now he lives in Beitar in Eretz Yisrael. And we're going to, this lecture tonight is based on this book which he has for sale, which is Lashon HaKodesh, which is really history, holiness in Hebrew, and it gives you tremendous insights from the beginning of time, from the time of Adam Harishon, from the time of the first man, and really explains many different ways that we understand Hebrew, but certainly he's going to explain a little better for us, and therefore it's an honor for us to have him here and to explain to us a little bit more about Hebrew, Eretz Yisrael, the different changes that have happened in Hebrew. And without further ado, Rabbi Klein. Please stand up.
Thank you, Rabbi Klein. It's an honor and a privilege to be here tonight to speak to you about the scripts of the Hebrew language. That's going to be our topic, and how that fits into the context of archaeology of the Holy Land. It's an interesting thing. Just my personal feeling living in the Holy Land, living in Eretz Yisrael, is you're living in a place where the Bible actually comes alive. You're living in the place where our forefathers walked these lands, and it just makes you feel a stronger connection to what you read and how it connects to what you're living. It's like even if the cities aren't exactly in the exact same place as they were in biblical times, but just the names of the cities roll off your tongue. Jerusalem. You're going to I'm going to Yerushalayim today. Or I'm going to Bnei Brak. I'm going to this Beitar. I'm going to Beit Shemesh. All these names that come up in the Bible and in rabbinic literature, you feel much more familiar with it because it's part of your everyday life. But in the end of the day, there's a lot of cultural differences between America and Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land. One of the interesting differences is that when you want to flip a coin, in America, so you have heads or tails. But when you want to flip a coin in Israel, so you got this. This is a contemporary shekel coin in the Holy Land. You have the head, the face, and the back, which I've learned as the obverse and the reverse of the coin. So instead of heads or tails, you call it the obverse and the reverse. On the front side of the coin, you have a number 1 in the Arabic numeral, and it says in Hebrew shekel chadash, the new shekel. That was because the Israeli bank refinanced their banking system in the 1980s. And here it says in Hebrew Tafshin Nun Daled, which was the year that it was minted, 1999. And it says in Hebrew Yisrael, Israel, and then it says it again in English, Israel, and then over here it says it in Arabic for our Arab citizens. So that's the front of the coin. The back of the coin has some nice flower over here because the Israeli national pastime is, potted plants or something. And then you have this thing, and the question is, what is this? What in the world is this weird foreign inscription? And the answer is that this weird foreign inscription is actually Hebrew. Those who read Hebrew know that seem that this doesn't look like any Hebrew that we know of, right? So we're going to see that the archaeology of the ancient Israel will show us that there was a different way of writing Hebrew that they used to use that we don't use nowadays. And when they minted this coin, the Israeli government decided to use this old way of writing Hebrew. So this actually says shekel in the old way of writing Hebrew. We're going to go through a few examples of archaeological witnesses to this old form of writing Hebrew, and then we'll speak more about it in light of rabbinic literature and put it more into a traditional perspective. All right, next one. This is a very interesting inscription that was found in 1838. It's known as the Shiluach inscription. Basically what it describes, and again it's using this weird script, right? Doesn't look like Hebrew to me. But basically what it does is it describes a story of what happened. It's actually a story that's mentioned in the Bible, in Tanakh, when Hezekiah was under siege by the Assyrians, by Sanherib, the king of Assyria. So he decided to divert the waters of the Gihon River from the way it was flowing outside the city, because he didn't want the Assyrians to use that for their supplies, and divert the flow of the river elsewhere. And so what he did was he built an underground tunnel to change the flow of the river. So he had two teams of construction workers building this tunnel. They were coming from opposite ends of where the tunnel was going to go, and then they met in the middle. And when they met in the middle, they wrote this inscription talking about how they made this tunnel, and the two groups met in the middle, and they completed the tunnel. This is actually a point of contention between the Israeli government and the Turkish government, because this was originally discovered in 1838, as I said, and that was the time that the Ottoman Empire was ruling the Holy Land. So they, appropriated this artifact for themselves, but the Israeli government wants to actually hold this. So this is the actual artifact itself is in Turkey now, in the Museum of Istanbul, but the Israeli government made a replica of it, and they have in the Israel Museum an exact replica of this Shiloach inscription, which again is using some different script that we're not familiar with. Okay, next one. This is a photograph of the Dir Allah inscription. This actually has to do with this week's Parsha. It actually wasn't really found in modern day Israel. It was found in Jordan in 1967. And this is an inscription that was found in a cave of something that purports to be a prophecy from Bilam. So like in this week's Parsha we speak about Balak hiring Bilam to curse the Jewish people. So this is an inscription ascribed to Bilam that's prophecies that Bilam himself apparently said. It's written in sort of Hebrew-Aramaic mixture, like a linguistic mixture of Hebrew and Aramaic. And that's a picture of the scrap of what they found. The next slide is a transcription of the text that they found in the Dir Allah inscription. So if you look closely again, these letters, we're not familiar with these letters. This is the ancient Hebrew way of writing. So this is not the type of Hebrew that we're familiar with. Okay. This is another piece of very interesting archaeology that they found. This was found in 1993. The Tel Dan stele. This was found in northern Israel and is written from the point of view of the king of Aram, Aram is Syria, and he basically Damascus, whatever that area. He basically boasts his ability to militarily defeat the king of Israel, and there's a controversial piece over here that may be interpreted as a reference to the house of David. So that's what this is famous for. The Tel Dan stele is apparently the first archaeological witness to the ancient house of David. And the next slide is a transcription of the text of the Tel Dan stele that we just saw. So the question is, that's good. The question is, what is this old script, and what do we do with it, and what does it mean to us, and what does our tradition say about this old script? It doesn't jive with what we see in front of us. We look at a siddur or a chumash, right, and it's not the same Hebrew script. So basically what it is that there were two Hebrew scripts. One is called Ksav Ivri and Ksav Ashuri. Ksav Ivri is also known as, in academic parlance, it's known as the paleo-hebrew script, or also known as the Phoenician scripts. When people talk about the Phoenician alphabet, they're talking about this same script, the paleo-hebrew, or what in our tradition is called Ksav Ivri, the Ivri script. The other script that we use nowadays is known as Ksav Ashuri, which seems to mean the Assyrian script. We'll have to see exactly in a few minutes what exactly that means. Why is it called the Assyrian script? Or why do we use this script, which is called Assyrian? We're not Assyrian, we're Jewish. So why it sounds like it's coming from a different place. But we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, so in my book, I made this nice chart over here. Bring the chart. This is a nice chart over here. At least I think it's a nice chart. My graphic designer thinks it's a nice chart of these two types of scripts. On the left side over there, you have examples of Ashuri script. Oh, on the far left, these are just the first 5 letters of the alphabet. On the far left is the traditional Ashuri script that we use nowadays. Gimel Dalet Hey, right? And then the left side of this chart are all different examples of Ashuri script. Moving towards the right from there, you have examples from the Bar Kokhba letters, which is archaeological evidence of archaeological findings of letters from Bar Kokhba and his army, the revolution in the mid first century CE, where they rebelled against the Romans. So they found these letters from the Bar Kokhba and his military, and this script over here is based on those inscriptions. The next one is from the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is from the Great Isaiah Scroll of the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found in Qumran. This next column over here is from the Habakkuk scroll, the Pesher Habakkuk, Habakkuk Pesher, which was a commentary that the Dead Sea Scroll people wrote on the prophecy of Habakkuk, which is in the 12 minor prophets in the Bible. And this last column over here is examples of Ashuri that were found in the burial site in Beis She'arim in northern Israel. So that's our traditional Ashuri script. This is the ancient Hebrew script, what I call Ivri, or paleo-hebrew, or Phoenician. And the first column over here is the Phoenician, and this is an example of the Canaanite calendar, known as the Gezer calendar, which is very similar. This is the Moabite script, which they found a stele called the Mesha stele, which we'll speak about in a moment. But that's the Mesha stele. This is a Samaritan script we'll speak about later, that the Samaritans actually preserved this Ivri script. They don't use the same script that we use. They use this weird Samaritan script. And this last one is also from the Dead Sea Scrolls. An example of Ivri from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is interesting because there's 3 types of Dead Sea Scrolls. There's 3 scripts used. There's 3 ways of writing in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's Ksav Ashuri, like we saw over there, 2 examples of Ksav Ashuri in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's Ksav Ivri over here, we saw from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then there's a 3rd way of writing they had in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where they would write something in regular Ksav Ashuri, but when they would write the name of God, when they read the 4-letter name of God, then they would write that in the ancient Hebrew script. So that was some interesting thing that the people in the Dead Sea Scroll, we don't know exactly who they were. I just call them the Dead Sea Scroll cult. So that the Dead Sea Scroll cult, they used to have this interesting minhag or something like that they would write sometimes with Ashuri, but then they would write God's name in Ivri. Okay, so in the next slide, we see this is a photograph of the Mesha stele that I mentioned before, which is also found in Jordan, actually, in, I don't remember what year. And this describes a war that's also described in the Bible, in the Book of Kings, where Mesha, the king of who was actually a shepherd, decided to rebel. The kingdom of Moab at that point didn't exist. It was subjugated under the kingdom of Israel, and he decided to make a rebellion and start his own kingdom. And he was successful. And the Bible also reports on this battle, and the Bible also says that he was successful. The only difference is that the Bible ascribes his success to the fact that the Jews were doing Avodah Zarah or whatever, and he ascribes his success to his Avodah Zarah. In this slide, we see a close-up of the text of the Mesha stele. There it says www. If this picture looks a little bit familiar, this was actually used on Rabbi Klein's advertisement for this lecture. But this is a close-up of the Mesha stele. So you see that you can see very clear this ancient Hebrew script. All right, This, I just threw this in because this is really cool. This is something that was found in December of 2015, so this is very recent. This is a seal which has the name in Hebrew. It says L'chizkiyahu Achaz Melech Yehuda. That's what it says in ancient Hebrew. Chizkiyahu, Hezekiah, was one of the kings of Judah, and he was the son of Achaz, and it says L'chizkiyahu Achaz Melech Yehuda. I don't know why it says, it doesn't say Ben Achaz or Bar Achaz. It doesn't say Hezekiah, the son of Achaz. It just says Hezekiah Achaz together. But that's an interesting thing. This is an interesting piece of archaeology that they found very recently. Okay.
Question on 5.
Yes.
What is the insect-looking icon and on the far
So
right?
okay, so this is it's called an Ankh, ANKH, which is an Egyptian symbol of life, and this they don't know exactly what it is, but they say that it's a flying sun. Apparently the archaeologists say that there was some sort of Egyptian influence on the way this seal looks. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to talk about what our tradition says about these two different scripts. We have the Ashuri script, which is a script that we use, and the script that was the ancient Hebrew script. So we're going to start. The next one. We're going to start over there with a red arrow. The Gemara says like this. I'll read the Gemara and try to explain it a little bit. Amar Mar Zutra, we won't read the whole thing, but Amar Mar Zutra said, V'itema Mar Ukva, or some say it was Mar Ukva who said this. Betchila nitna Torah liyisrael b'ksav ivri v'lashon HaKodesh. Originally, the Torah was given to the Jewish people in the Ivri script and in the holy language. Chazav v'nitna lahem b'mei Ezra b'ksav Ashuris v'lashon Arami. And then afterwards, God went and re-gave the Torah to the Jewish people in the time of Ezra, meaning the beginning of the Second Temple period, in Ashuri script, the script that we use now, and in Lashon Arami, which is the Aramaic language. Says the Gemara, Biraru lahen Yisrael liyisrael ksav Ashuris v'lashon HaKodesh. The Jewish people, they chose for themselves sort of a compromise between these two paradigms, and they chose for themselves the Ashuri script, which is what we use, v'lashon HaKodesh, and the Hebrew language, the holy language, instead of Ashuri script and Hebrew and Aramaic language, or Ivri script and Lashon and Hebrew language. They chose the script like what Ezra said, and the language like originally the way Moses gave us the Torah. V'nichol lahedyotos ksav ivris v'lashon Arami, and they left for the hedyotos the Ivri script and the Aramaic language. So what's hedyotos? So the word hedyot, I think personally means idiot, or is related to the word idiot. But it colloquially, colloquially it means like a commoner, just like the regular people, or sort of the masses. But the Gemara says in this context, hedyotos means somebody else. My hedyotos, who are the hedyotos, the idiots or the commoners? Amar Rav Chizda says Kusai. They are the Kuthians. The Kuthians, if you're not familiar, is a story is a derogatory term that the Talmud and Rabbinic literature has for the Samaritans. The Bible, towards the end of the Book of Kings, talks about the story of the exile of the 10 tribes. So what happened was that the Assyrian king came in and took the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, took them into exile and brought them eastward, and he replaced them with people from his own territory. So there was a city called Kutha, which is probably in the area of Kurdistan nowadays, and he took the people of Kutha and he brought them to what was formerly the kingdom of Israel, which their capital was Samaria, Shomron, and he resettled those people there, and those people became called the Samaritans because they lived in the Shomron. And what happened was they actually came around afterwards and started claiming that they're the original Jews and we're the usurpers, right? But really they're the foreigners that the king of Assyria imported into the Holy Land. So these Samaritans are degenerate, are called in a degrading fashion by the Talmud and by rabbinic literature. They're called Kusim. They're called Kuthians because that was their original homeland. They came from Kutha. Fine. So the Gemara says that these Hediotos, these Samaritans, these Kuthians, they're the ones that use Aramaic and the ancient Ivri script. They don't use the same script as us. They don't use Ashuri. They use the ancient Ivri script. And we saw on the chart before that there was a Samaritan Bible from the 14th century, which is fairly late, and it still uses the ancient script that we don't use anymore. The Gemara continues. It says, "Amar of Chizda." My Ksav Ivris. What do we mean when we say Ksav Ivris, the Ivri script? Amar of Chizda Libuna. Rav Chizda says it's talking about the Libuna, Ksav Libuna. It's talking about the Libuna script. So in my book I bring different explanations of what does it mean Libuna, but the simplest explanation is that Libuna is an allusion to Lebanon. Libuna is Lebanon, and Lebanon or the area that we call Lebanon nowadays is where the ancient Phoenicians lived. So if they weren't familiar with the paleo-Hebrew script as it was as a paleo-Hebrew script, they would have been more familiar with it as the Phoenician script. So the Gemara is saying that this, what we call the Phoenician script, that's what we mean when we talk about Ksav Ivri. Fine. So now the Gemara brings a few different opinions about this. The Gemara says like this: Tanya, we learned in a Brayso, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Roi haya Ezra shetinatin Torah al yadai liYisrael. Ezra, the leader of the Jewish people in the beginning of the Second Temple period, who led the people back after the exile from Babylon. So the Gemara says that it was fitting that he should be the one that the Torah should be given through him instead of Moses. Ilmale kadmoi Moshe. If it wasn't for the fact that Moses predated him, so the Torah would have been given by Ezra. He was almost as great as Moses. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, but Moshe hu Omer, regarding Moshe, the Torah says, Moshe Allah el halikim. Moshe went up to God, or towards God, towards the mountain of God. The Ezra hu Omer, regarding Ezra, it says, Hu Ezra Allah mi Bavel. He is Ezra who came up from Bavel. So he uses the same word. It says by Moses going up to the mountain, it says Allah, he went up, and it says by Ezra that when he came up from Bavel, it says Allah, also he came up. My aliyah ha'amur kan Torah, afalei amur lahala and Torah. Just as when it talks about Moses going up, it means receiving the Torah. So when it talks about Ezra going up, it also alludes to the fact that he could have been the one that would receive the Torah. Okay, we'll skip to the bottom line. And it says over here, even though even though the Torah was not given through Ezra, because historically Moses predated Ezra, so he wasn't given the one that the Torah was given through. Still, nishtana al yado haksav, the script that was going to be used for the holy language, for Lashon HaKodesh, for Hebrew, was changed through Ezra. Shenamar, as it says in the Pasuk, v'ksav hanishtavan, the nishtavan ksav. Kasuv Aramis, Umuturgam Aramis. It was written in Aramaic and it was translated in Aramaic. Uksiv Lok Halen Kisar Lemikro Pishal Aradela Malka. This is talking about a story with in Daniel, that there was a writing on the wall and nobody was able to interpret or to read or to understand what the writing was. Uksiv Vukatav is Mishnah HaTorah. You should, when it's talking about Moses writing this a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll, it says he wrote Mishnah HaTorah Hazos. This Mishnah Torah. So the Gemara exegetically interprets the word Mishnah as Mishnah means repetition, but Mishnah could also be related to the word Shinui, which means the change. So the Gemara says, the Talmud says, Ksav haroi lihishtanos. It's a script, a way of writing that is supposed to be changed. It's fitting to be changed. Right, so that's what it means. So these are allusions to the fact that Ezra changed the script of writing the Torah, which was originally Ashuris of every script that we don't use nowadays, to what we call nowadays Ashuris. When the Gemara says Lama Nikra Ashuris, why is the script that we use nowadays called Ashuris? Sha'ala imahem me Ashur, because it came with them from Ashur. Ashur is Assyria. That was the place to where the 10 tribes were originally exiled. Now, a simplistic way of reading this Gemara is that, they borrowed the script that the Assyrians used, but it's not true, because we actually have archaeological evidence of what script the Assyrians used, and they didn't use the script that we call Ksav Ashuris. The Assyrians actually used a form of cuneiform, which is a completely different way of writing. They didn't use an alphabetical script. They used cuneiform, which is a completely different way of writing. So when we say that this script came up with them from Ashur, it doesn't mean that they borrowed it from Ashur. Rather, the commentaries explain that it means it came up with them from Ashur And it means that when the Jews returned from the exile, the 10 tribes that went to Ashur, the Judah and Benjamin that went to Babylon, when they came back to the Holy Land for the building of the Second Temple, so they instituted certain things to commemorate the fact that we went to exile and we came back. An example of this is the Ramban. Nachmanides writes that the months that we use, the Talmud says, the months that we use nowadays are not the original names of the months that we find in early books of the Tanakh, of the Bible. For example, there's a month called Bul in Tanakh, and there's a month called Ziv in Tanakh, and we don't use those names of months. What the Talmud what tradition tells us is that when we came out from the exile of Babylon and we returned to the Holy Land, so the rabbis decided to institute that we're going to use the names of the months that the Babylonians used. We're going to borrow from their calendar and make it part of our tradition in order to commemorate the fact that we were once exiled to Babylon and we came out of that exile. So Bul became Cheshvan, and Ziv became Iyar, and those are the months that we're more familiar with. So just like they instituted to use the Babylonian names of months, so we instituted this new type of script, and we called it Ashur as a way of commemorating the fact that we came from Ashur, that we came from this Babylonian exile, and we survived it, and we went back to the Holy Land. So this is the first opinion in the Gemara that says that we originally used Ksav Ivri, and then afterwards Ezra came and switched it to Ksav Ashuri that we use nowadays. We're still on this slide. Tanya. Now we learned in a brisa. There's going to be two more opinions about in rabbinic literature over here about the history of the script of the holy language. Rebbe says, Rebbe is the editor of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He says, "B'tchila b'ksav zeh nitna Torah." Originally, the Torah was given in what we use nowadays in Ashuri, and then kevan shechatu. When the Jews sinned, so napach lahem l'royetz, people forgot the original Ksav Ashuris, and they started using a different script. They started using a different script of Ivri, and then kevan shechazru b'hen hichziru lahem. Then when they stopped sinning, which I would interpret as they started sinning with avodah zarah, they started sinning with idolatry, and then in the beginning of the Second Temple period, in the time of Ezra, so Talmud teaches us that the rabbis prayed that they would get rid of the evil inclination towards idolatry, which is why nowadays it's not something that we contend with on a daily basis. So they stopped sinning with idolatry. So the old script came back and they went back to Ashuris. So Rebbe says that they originally used Ashuris, then they switched to Ivri because of their sins, and then they went back to Ashuris. And then a few lines later it says, Lama nikra shema Ashuris. Why is it called Ashuris? Shemu sheres b'ksav, because it's a fortunate script. The script is fortunate, which is very interesting terminology. What do you mean the script is fortunate? So I found two explanations amongst the early commentators. The Rambam, in his Pirush HaMishnayos, in his commentary to the Mishnah, Mesachos Yadayim, in the Yadayim tractate, he says that what it means that it's a praiseworthy script means that its letters are distinct from one another. It's not cursive where the letters run into each other and you can sometimes get confused, but each letter is separate, so that's why it's called praiseworthy, or it's happy script, or distinct. Rabbi Nachi writes, a different commentator, Rabbi Nachi, who's printed over here all the way on the left side of the page of the Talmud. So Rabbi Nachi says that, why is it called, what does it mean, musheres? Musheres is from like a expression of yashar. Yashar means straight. So if you look in the script that we use nowadays, it has a lot of straight lines. It's not like, there aren't so many curves, it's more straight. It's like squared, it's boxed. The letters are more squared or boxed letters. So that's like one of the differences that's one of the differences that characterizes the differences between the original Ksav Ivri and Ksav Ashuris. The Ksav Ivri is more curves, and Ksav Ashuris, the one that we use nowadays, is more lines and angles. Another difference would be actually that the script that we have nowadays has, there's certain letters that there's if it appears at the end of a word, so the final letter, it's a special letter, like a mem. There's a mem in the beginning or middle of a word, and if it's a mem at the end of the word, there's a special mem. So there's a few letters like that: mem, nun, tzadik, pei, and chaf. So if they appear at the end of a word, so they look different than usual. So that's only true in the script that we use nowadays. In the ancient Ivri script, that wasn't true. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I'm sorry. Can we go back one more opinion in the Talmud? The last big line. It says Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Amar Mishum Rabbi Elazar bar Parta Sha'amar Mishum Rabbi Elazar Moedai. These rabbis all said in the name of Rabbi Elazar Moedai, Ksav Zeh Loi Nishtana Kol Iker. The script never changed. We always used Ksav Ashuris. Right? So we have the first opinion that says we originally used Ksav Ivri and Ezra switched to Ksav Ashuri. That's Rabbi Yossi. The second opinion is Rebbe, who said we originally used Ashuri, and we switched to Ivri because of sin, and then Ezra restored Ashuri. And then the third opinion, Rabbi Elazar Hamadai, says no, they always used Ashuri script. Those are the three opinions in the Talmud. 1 second. Those are the three opinions. Now the question is, okay, so which opinion do we follow? Let's say, which opinion do we go with? That's one question. And the second question is, is the last opinion, Rabbi Elazar Hamadai, is he completely disproven from the fact that archaeological evidence shows that there was a paleo-Hebrew script that was in use before Ashuri? So we have the facts on the ground that would seem to be showing us that they didn't always use Ashuri. They did use other scripts. So how can he say that they always used Ashuri? Okay, those are some of the issues that we're going to try to discuss over here. Not yet. Okay, whatever. So in practice it goes like this. The Gaonim, if you're familiar with it in the flow of Jewish history, after the sealing of the Talmud in about the year 500, so there were a few hundred years before what we call the Rishonim. Rashi is like, let's say, one of the beginning of the Rishonim. Rashi was born, I think, in 1040. So between, let's say, 500 and 1040 was a period of time known as the Gaonic period, more or less. The Gaonim were people that lived after the Talmud, but before what we call the Rishonim. The Gaonim, they mostly lived in Babylon, but they lived all over in North Africa as well, and in the Holy Land as well. And the Gaonim are very much part of our tradition, even though we don't have so much writings from them. So a lot of the Gaonim, as well as Rabbi Hananel, who was, let's say, the last generation of the Gaonim, or maybe the next generation after the Gaonim, as well as the Yad Ramah, who is one of the commentaries on Sanhedrin, which is the tractate of the Gemara that I was showing you, and Ibn Ezra, who's a famous commentator on the Torah. All of these authorities say that we follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer Hamadai, the last opinion, the most problematic opinion, right? The one that seems to not work with what we understand from archaeology. And Rabbi Hananel actually brings a very interesting proof to this idea. We thought that we always used Ksav Ashuri. We always used the Ashuri script, and we never used any other script. Rabbi Hananel cites a passage in the Talmud, in Tractate Megillah, where the Talmud says that the tablets that Moses brought, the luchos, the tablets, so they were inscribed, the words on the tablets were inscribed through and through. I mean, when God inscribed the words on the tablets, it didn't just go a little bit in; it would go all the way through in. And there was somehow some sort of miracle that we can't relate to exactly. We're able to look at the writing on the tablet from this side and look at it from the other side, and it would be the exact same the exact same writing. I don't know exactly how that worked, but
The CSUN sign.
what?
The CSUN sign.
I don't know. And it went through and through. So now the Talmud tells us that there's a problem with this, because let's go to the next slide. If you look at the final mem and the letter samach, this is the script that we use nowadays, right? If I would engrave this through and through, this little piece inside the mem, or this little piece inside the samach, would fall out, right? And then you wouldn't realize that it's a mem or a samach. You would just see like some sort of like rectangular box or sort of circle box. You wouldn't realize that there's a letter over there. So the Talmud tells us that the inside of the final mem and the inside of the samach were suspended in the air through a miracle. That's what the Talmud says, and it was suspended in the air like that. Now, Rabbi Hananel reasons like this. This passage of the Talmud that says that the inside of the mem, of the final mem, was suspended miraculously, that's a proof to us that the script was always the Ashuri script. Because as I mentioned before, the Ivri script, there were no difference in the final letters between a final mem and a regular mem. In fact, let's see the next slide. So in this slide, these are two types of mem in the original Ivri script, and that's how a nun looks in Ivri. I don't know why I did that. Okay, but these are the two types of mems. These are different types of mems from different archaeological witnesses about how a mem looked in the ancient Ivri script. Both of them are both a final mem and a regular mem. These are because we said in the Ivri script there was no difference between a final mem and an Ivri mem. Now, in the Ivri script, there's no need for a miracle, right? Let's go back to the previous slide. In here, we need a miracle to make it suspended in the air. If the tablets that Moses brought at Mount Sinai were written in the Ivri script, there would be no need for a miracle. If it was written in a Shuri script, the script that we use nowadays, then that calls for a miracle for the middle to be suspended. So Rabbi Nachi says that passage in the Talmud that talks about the inside being suspended in the air proves to us that according to tradition, we always use the Ashuri script, and that's why he goes like the last opinion that the script never changed, and that's what Rabbi Nachi says.
It could have been the second opinion also.
What?
It could have been the second opinion also.
It could have been the second opinion as well. That's true, because the second opinion said that originally the Torah was given in Ashuris, and then we switched to Ivri, and then we switched back to Ashuris. That's true. But this is the way he says it. Yeah. Okay. Wait a second. Let's stay over here for a second. So the truth is like this. The commentators actually address this issue, and they say that it's not 100% foolproof. This proof that we always use the Ashuri script, and there's sort of two approaches in how we can reject this proof. The first way of rejecting it is a parallel passage. What I quoted to you from the Talmud about the inside of the letter being suspended through a miracle, that was the Babylonian Talmud. In the Jerusalemic Talmud, the Talmud Yerushalmi, also known as the Palestinian Talmud sometimes. So in that version of the Talmud, it says it slightly differently. It says, according to the opinion that the tablets were written in the Ashuri script, so then the mem and the samach were suspended in air miraculously. According to the opinion that the tablets were given in Ivri script, so if we look at the next slide, the letter ayin in Ivri script is just a circle, like an eye. The word ayin in Hebrew is ayin, so it's just a regular circle. Now that needs to be suspended in the air. So the Talmud says, according to the opinion that the Torah that we originally used the Ivri script, so the ayin was suspended in the middle of the air instead of the mem or the samach. That's what the Gemara says. So according to that parallel passage in the Jerusalem Talmud, so that you don't have any proof, because you can say it both ways. It was either the mem or samach, or it was the ayin. We don't know which one was the reality. So it's not 100%. It's not 100% that we have to say that we used originally the Ashuri script. Another approach is you can say that even if there's a dispute about what was the original script, did we originally use Ivri or did we originally use Ashuri, but everyone would agree that the tablets that Moses received, everyone would agree that was Ashuri script. You could say it like that. And if you want to take that a step further, you could say that the whole dispute about what type of script did we originally use for the Hebrew language, that whole dispute is confined to what script did they originally use for, let's say, just a Torah scroll. If you want to say it like that, so then the archaeological evidence doesn't really talk to us. So we'll get back to that point in a moment. But if you want to say it like that, the archaeological evidence, I think, doesn't talk to us. Now, so basically what we're left with is three opinions, and there's no clear proof of which way do we go on this dispute. So there's a sefer called Sefer HaYikarim, Rabbi Yosef Albo, and he lived in the 1400s, I think, 1500s. And the Sefer HaYikarim, he writes that the opinion that we should accept is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi was the first opinion that said that originally we used Ksav Ivri, and then Ezra changed it to Ksav Ashuris. That's the Sefer HaYikarim. And he offers an interesting proof to this. The Sefer Ikarim brings a story. If we're familiar with Nachmanides, Ramban, he wrote a commentary on the Bible, on the Chumash, and he wrote at the end of his days. The Ramban actually originally lived in Spain, and then at the end of his days, he made it to the Holy Land. He came to Eretz Yisrael, and when he came to Eretz Yisrael, so he wrote like sort of an appendix to his commentary on the Torah, and he added a few different things that a lot of them have to do with his experience in the Holy Land. So Ramban writes that when he came to the Holy Land, so he was near Akko, and he found a coin there. And he saw an inscription on the coin that he wasn't able to read. So he couldn't read the inscription. So what did he do? He went to his local Samaritan, to the Good Samaritan, right? Yeah, he went to a Good Samaritan and asked the Good Samaritan to read this inscription. And there's actually a hotel in Israel called the Good Samaritan. So he asked the Samaritan to read this, the Shomoni, the Kusi, to read the inscription on the coin, and he reads it, and he tells him that the coin says shekel hashkolim, a shekel of the shekels. And so why was this Samaritan guy able to read the coin and the Ramban wasn't? Because the coin was inscribed with the ancient paleo-hebrew script. That was the old script that people used to use. And that coin is some sort of archaeological artifact that the Ramban actually found, and he wasn't able to read it because he wasn't familiar with that script. So the Ramban writes this in his commentary to the Torah. So the Sefer Ikarim cites this passage from the Ramban, and he says, so you see from here that there is evidence to the fact that we did use a different script, not Ashuri that we use now. We originally used something else, and we switched to Ashuri. So that's why he wants to say that we I wouldn't say we decide the halacha in terms of Rabbi Yossi, but it would seem to say that like Rabbi Yossi's opinion is the one that we might follow. But afterwards, I found a later authority, Maram al-Shakar, who writes that these coins don't prove anything, because he says, as we said before, that the entire dispute is confined to what type of script was used for writing a Torah scroll. So when you find a coin, the coin doesn't tell you what type of script was used for writing a Torah scroll. The coin just tells you, this is some sort of secular item that wasn't used for ritual purposes. So it doesn't tell you what they used for writing a Torah scroll. What did they use for writing a Torah scroll? I don't know. We don't know. We have a dispute in the Talmud. We don't have any archaeological evidence for it whatsoever. In fact, I don't think there could be any there's a very, very small chance that there ever will be archaeological evidence that will be able to resolve this dispute. Because what we would need to find is a Torah scroll that was from before the Second Temple period, right? Because that was when Ezra changed the script. So it'd have to be from before Ezra changed the script, and it would have to be a Torah scroll. And which Torah scrolls are written on parchment, and parchment decomposes because it's biodegradable, so it decomposes. So you're not going to find a parchment that's that old, unless by chance the Dead Sea Scrolls were preserved in a cave, and the condition, climate was just perfect that they were able to be preserved. But the chances of finding such a thing are very slim. And you would need to be able to verify that this Torah scroll that predates the Second Temple was part of the mainstream Jewish community. It wasn't some far-off cult. Like even the Dead Sea Scrolls don't prove anything, because there is some weird cult that maybe were Sadducees, maybe there was something else. We don't know exactly what they were. They can't prove anything to us. So you need all of these conditions in order to be able to answer up the question. The closest thing, and I think this is actually one of the coolest things that they've actually found in archaeology, is the next slide. I think this is one of the coolest things they found. This is found in 1979 in Jerusalem. It's called the Ketef Hinnom silver scroll. This is a scroll that's written in silver. It dates to the time of the First Temple period, so it's very old. This is actually the oldest inscription that they found that quotes the text of the Bible. It has the bracha of the Birkas Kohanim, that the Kohanim give the brachas. More or less the text of the Birkas Kohanim. That's the oldest text of the Bible we found. Now, of course, and it's written in the ancient Ivri script. It's not written in the script that we have. This is just a transcription for us to be able to read it better. But, so that would, let's say, prove that they use the paleo-Hebrew script, the Ivri script, not the script that we have nowadays. But still, it's not a Torah scroll. They don't know exactly what this was. Archaeologists, they conjecture that it's probably some sort of amulet, like maybe something similar to a mezuzah or some sort of protection thing. They don't know exactly what it was, but it wasn't a Torah scroll. So it still doesn't prove, what would it be. But I think that. 1 second. Let's hold the questions to that. We're going to finish in just a minute. This is an interesting thing that we have this three-way dispute. We have two rabbis, three opinions. That's how it always works. But there is one source in the Talmud which seems to suggest that indeed we follow the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, and that's this proof is brought from Rabbi Nachi Klein, who died in the 1970s. So he writes. He's actually a very interesting person, but we don't have time to talk about exactly who he was. But he wrote a encyclopedic 45-volume compendium on the Pentateuch, on the Chumash, and he writes that there's a passage in the Gemara in Zvachim on 62a in Tractate Zvachim in the Babylonian Talmud, where it says over there, talks about the last three of the prophets. They functioned in the beginning of the Second Temple period. Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Those are the last three of the prophets. Their prophecies are the last three in the 12 prophets, the book of 12 prophets in the Bible. So it talks about what was their most important prophecies of Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. So one opinion in the Gemara says that the most important prophecy of one of these last three prophets was the change of the script from Ksav Ivri to Ksav Ashuri. Right? That Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that's the name of the Tanaic sage who says this, who says this statement. He says that the most important prophecy of these three prophets was changing the script from Ivri to Ashuri. Now, if we plug this back into the three opinions that we encountered before, so this follows the first opinion. The first opinion that said we originally used Ivri and was switched to Ashuri. Now, how does this jive with the fact that passage said it was Ezra, and this passage said that it was Chag, Zechariah, Malachi? That we can deal with at a different time. But what both passages agree with is that originally we used Ksav Ivri, the paleo-Hebrew script, and then we switched to Ksav Ashuri. So you could say, okay, fine. So this Talmudic passage, Zvachim, reflects the opinion, let's say, a minority opinion of the first opinion over there, right? You could say that, and then it doesn't prove anything. But there's another factor, and this is a very interesting point. Rabbi Menachem Kasher realizes the Talmud elsewhere says that Mishnas Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Kav v'Naki. The teachings of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov are Kav v'Naki. Kav are measured, v'Naki are they're pure, they're clean, and that's the Talmud's way of saying that whenever Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says a halacha, so we always follow his opinion. In whatever disputes he has with other sages, we always follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So if that's true, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov in this context follows the first opinion that we used Ivri and then switched to Ashuri, that would conclusively that's the opinion we should follow, and that's what it seems that the archaeological evidence actually supports. And I think that this is a good place to stop. Thank you for coming, and thank you for listening, and thank you for staying. Oh yes, questions? Yes, ma'am.
In what type of setting was this found?
I'm not sure. I think it was. I don't remember the provenance of this artifact, but I think it was in an official archaeological dig.
When you say silver, what was it? The lettering that was melted silver, or what was?
I think that the material that it's written on itself is silver, but I'm not sure. You can look it up on Wikipedia. I think I was bothered by the same thing. I couldn't conclusively find out what it was. Yeah, what's another question?
Another question. You referred to the lettering being at the beginning. Happy. Why was it referred to that way? I think it was the straight lettering.
Because Musheres can mean like fortunate and can also mean happy. Like Ashrei, we're going to say in a few minutes, in a few seconds, hopefully Ashrei. So Ashrei means like fortunate, but also means like happy. So I just, in my head, that is sort of synonymous. Fortunate and happy. Yeah, what was your question? That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I there's what to work with on that. I'll tell you an interesting thing, that Hezekiah's son Menashe, who was a big idolater, he was the longest reigning king in the kings of Judah. He reigned for 55 years. So Menashe was very into idolatry, and Menashe had a son named Ammon. And the name Ammon is actually the name of the chief god of the Egyptian pantheon. So like there's some sort of connection over there, the Egyptian influences. I don't know exactly how to interpret it or what to make of it, but that's just like an interesting factoid that's sort of related to what you're asking.
Can you tell us what else is in the book?
What else is in the book? So this is just an appendix A actually, about the scripts. I speak more about like the history of the language. What did Adam speak? What happened at the Tower of Babel? What did Abraham speak? What languages did they speak? Did the Canaanites speak when Abraham came to the land of Canaan? What did the Jews speak in Egypt? When did Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew language in its ancient form, stop being used as a spoken language, and the development of other Judeo languages like Yiddish, Ladino develop? I read about the relationship between Aramaic and Lashon HaKodesh. I write about different ideas, Kabbalistic ideas about the correlation between Aramaic and Lashon HaKodesh. I have another appendix about the use of Egyptian proper names in the Bible. I have another appendix about prayers, why some prayers are in Aramaic, some prayers are in Lashon HaKodesh, different topics as well. Okay, thank you very much.